Hi, welcome to the supplemental meeting of the CNCF IoT Edge Working Group called for the purposes of doing group preparation of this Edge native white paper. Looks like we've got 5 attendees today. I put a link to that white paper in the chat. I took a brief look at it just in the last 30 seconds. It looks like there have been a number of edits and a number of comments that got resolved. So that's good. It looks like we're moving forward. Does anybody want to have any opening remarks on going about trying to move this paper forward? Otherwise, I'd propose that what we do is what seemed to work last time of just opening the doc, scrolling on through, looking at the comments and chatting people's thoughts on the comments as we go along, try to close them out during the meeting. I could open that, but if anybody else wants to do it, that's fine. I don't know if I personally touched it that much in the last few days. If somebody's been super active on it, maybe, or somebody has something they specifically wanted to call out and discuss, maybe you could take the mic at this point. Otherwise, if I'll do it.
So I wasn't super active, but I tackled one of the issues that was that remained open and for discussion. So maybe we can go to that, and that's this context information.
Okay.
So I add a little bit of things in the table from my point of view. So maybe.
Do you want to open the document and share it to point out what you're talking about, or do you want me to do it?
No, I can do it. A second. Do you see it?
Yes, we're at the bottom of a table area. Is it the block underneath security that you're talking about?
Exactly, yeah. So those are the differences between, I think, Edge native and the cloud native, and it was open. What do we mean by the context information? So from my point of view, the services and applications running in a cloud rarely do need to interact with the local environment and the hardware, maybe with an exception with for the GPUs. But the services running at the edge are mostly or in a lot of cases interact with the local environment. So cameras, sensors, actuators, user inputs, and things like that. So I think the original idea about context information, at least from my point of view, was in that area. So I'm interested to hear what others think about it.
I agree that it is a critical difference, and we should call it out. The one comment I'd have on this, other than just take it as is I'm wondering, context information, when I first read that, I wasn't clear what it meant. And maybe if you want to call out or just put : IO devices or whatever you had in mind for picking up context, that would be a good thing.
Yeah, I don't have a good word for it yet. Yeah. So how would you add it? Context information /
IO devices or
devices, yeah. Let's keep it like that for now. Huh?
You know, technically, I guess you could, some of these things, in some contexts, people assume IO devices mean supplemental things plugged into the computer. But I think for many of these bespoke edge devices, they're kind of built into the device itself. So maybe IO devices isn't the best thing, but that was just what came to mind. But, I think just saying context information left me wondering what it meant. And I didn't figure it out until I read the other two columns, and, then I thought I understood it, but a good title there, I think.
So that's what I got from the other description in these columns, and I thought, from my perspective, that it's good to. I don't know what's original author meant by the context information, but this is what I got, and I think it's good to have it called out. I mean, it doesn't cover all the edge use cases, but I think for a lot of them, it is the valid point that it's not just a cloud workload; it's something that interacts with the environment. So maybe environment information is a better.
Yeah, I think that would be.
Yeah.
Or even kind of local context information or environment.
Environment. We can add here a geofencing as well, or.
Yeah, I think that would be, getting location would be one example of this, right?
I didn't want to go too much there, but there's a section down about this, and I volunteered to maybe contribute to that part of the paper. So
okay, well, if nobody has any objections, let's just close this out then. That part that is strike through, why don't you just delete it and finish this so it's ready to go, and then you can hit the checkbox on your comment. And I'm assuming nobody has any objections to this. If you do, speak up now.
Yeah.
Hey, I just have a question related to the local context and environment. It certainly helps me. But the somewhat related, is the infrastructure immutable, or is it mutable? Is that related to this? If you go cloud native, hey, if I'm going to deploy something, I blow it away and start over. If it's a service deployed to the edge and it's tied to the hardware, does that mean you change it configuration-wise in the operation, or is it set up in a way that you can blow it away and start over from an application perspective? Does that make sense?
I think it does. So I didn't want to go into too much detail here. Okay. I just wanted to have it called out that those applications usually. So why do we deploy things on the edge instead of the cloud, so we can pick up the local information quicker? So it's usually something that our clients connecting to the cloud are doing in a typical scenario. So now we have these workloads. Actually, we are managing it, right? So from my perspective, it should be controllable by some kind of a control plane, similar that we have from the cloud perspective. Like it's something that I'm actually working on right now. So how do we actually manage this state of like a Bluetooth mesh? Do we keep it local, or is it provisioned on the cloud? And as you said, like if we blow it all up and we start over, can it be picked up and restored into some meaningful state? I think it should, right? So maybe that's something we could call on down in a section dedicated to this topic.
Okay. Yeah, I'm good with that part. Maybe I was changing topics. Is a mutable infrastructure? I think it could be both ways. It could be the same as cloud native. It could be different. But that looks good.
Yeah.
To close that out.
So yeah, let's talk about the next the next topic. Yeah. So, but
yeah, Joel, I think to me anyway, immutable infrastructure, as I understand it, and maybe my personal definition is off base compared to others, is this idea that once you deploy some piece of quote infrastructure, you're never going to try to modify it or patch it. You have a spec for it. And if you decide that something needs changing, the spec changes first, and then you cause a complete rebuilt deployment from scratch so that you know that you got what you asked for. Now, a lot of that might depend on the so-called infrastructure being software defined. If it's an edge hardware device that exists in a physical reality, I guess blowing it away literally means blowing it away, like destroying the device. And I don't know that that process would be typical in edge deployments I've seen when it comes to the hardware aspects anyway. If you had the luxury of having it all software defined, sure. But I'm not sure how much of edge is like that, particularly when you get down to IO. That sort of tends to be hardware. That they do have, I mean, software defined radios and things, but sensors themselves are often going to be hardware.
Yeah, maybe, Steve, it's getting into the details of the differences between, I think it was near, far, and tiny, the different types of edge components. And then if you take it, and the purpose of the paper is to enable an application developer, what do you need to know? And so far as an attribute, is kind of where the logic I was thinking about. Because we're fundamentally talking about, okay, is it a hardware component? Do you write the software and you compile it and build it for the actual infrastructure so it's tied together? That would be a difference from cloud native, or it's more of an abstraction, if you will.
Well, I think if you had infrastructure,
again, it could be, if it's, sorry, Steve, it's just to finish the thought, if it's near, there's more resources to it, then that applies. If it's tiny or far, if you will, on that Linux Foundation white paper, it could be a difference. I could see it going potentially both ways. And that was more of a question, is the spirit of what stayed in this. Take it as a question, because I don't know. I don't know all use cases. I have certain areas, but certainly not all.
So my thought is, when it comes to immutable infrastructure, if the infrastructure is software-defined networking, maybe software-defined infrastructure in the sense of using VMs or containers, or even software-defined radio, that actually isn't going to be different from cloud native, in that you can still do immutable infrastructure, and you should. So that wouldn't belong as a line item as a difference. It's only when you get to hardware where I think immutable sort of goes out the window when it is hardware, unless if it were hardware, immutable to me would mean that if I need to change what's out there at an edge location, I need to order a new one from a factory, get it shipped there, and blow away the old one. And maybe there's people who do it, but I'm guessing that's not common. Anyway, if you want to leave a remark on that, if this didn't resolve that to your satisfaction, just leave a comment in the document, and we'll get other eyeballs on it, and maybe other remarks.
Sure.
I don't know how to put it in words, but what we discussed from the beginning of talking about Edge and Kubernetes is that those edge workloads are usually tainted to a specific nodes, having a specific, as we're talking now, hardwares or cameras and things like that. That's also what Acri is doing, right? Trying to find the nodes with proper hardware resources and deploying adequate workloads there. So yeah, it's definitely much more used in that context than in the cloud, where you just want to scale out a single type of workload to as many resources as it's available, right?
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
But I don't know how to formulate that either in the similarities or the differences.
We could even name this heterogeneous resources if we want to talk about that, or heterogeneous external resources.
Yeah, Kate, your audio is really choppy.
Resources wording, but that's just another idea. Is this better at all?
Yeah, the
Now
last
it is.
sentence was good.
Yeah.
No.
No, it's better.
It's good
Okay.
now.
Well, I was just saying if it's still good. Okay, great.
Yes.
I was just saying we could even name this category heterogeneous resources or external resources, or I don't know, something along, or leaf devices. Because it is talking about how resources are different for the cloud native sense, where the resources are usually embedded in the servers, they're often consistent. While the more you get to the edge, the more that resources takes on a different idea. It's external to the servers, they're everywhere, they're diverse. So that's another option, is using the resource wording.
I like what you said. So how do you call it? External resources, right? Maybe that's the better term than the context information.
Yeah, or
but
maybe
to me,
even external resource interaction.
hey, can you repeat your original thought? I liked it for a moment and then I forget about it.
Yeah, I think external resources or external heterogeneous resources. And I like the word you put there, Steve, of interaction, because we're not just getting data from these resources, we're also managing. So it's not just about using them, it's also about managing them. So interaction discusses that two-way street.
Okay. Yeah, that looks good to me.
Oh, and I would put much more things about this, maybe discussion about immutable infrastructure and tainted workloads and discovery and all these kind of things in a paragraph dedicated to this. But
yeah, but not in the table, right?
Yeah, just call it out that we, these are the concern of the edge workloads, right?
Okay. Okay, this looks good to me.
Cool.
By the way, I don't know if I didn't see any comments, but I if you want to scroll up, Dion, ahead of this table of differences, I did add the table of what's the same, which is something we talked about in the last meeting. So hopefully people agree with that. If I missed anything, go ahead and add it there. But that is a delta to the document that wasn't in the last, that wasn't in here the last time we had a discussion. But I made an attempt to cover the categories of things that I think are identical between edge native and cloud native.
This looks good.
I think the technique I used to come up with this list was I went at the original cloud native definition documents, that were published in the CNCF charter, went over the bullets of what was in there, and everything that was in there that applies to edge native, I put as an entry in this table. So I kind of think I got them all, but maybe if not, anybody's welcome to add some more or edit those. Okay, how about if we scroll down to wherever the next comment is in the document?
Is there any comments above? No? Okay, yeah, let's go down.
Maybe you have to click on those pluses. I'm not sure.
Would it be useful? I think comment resolution is important. Would it also be useful to maybe
Kate,
spend this time taking a first run at establishing, then I'm sure there'll be comments on that decision. Sorry, did I go out again?
yeah, you did. It was really horrible. So
Okay.
you have to repeat everything you said, I think.
Can you hear me now?
Halfway.
Okay.
It
Never
comes
mind.
and
I'll
goes,
just
yeah.
chat it. I'll put it in the.
Okay.
So here's the first comment.
Okay.
Declarative orchestration.
Yeah, I would agree with Kate's comment that maybe this isn't unique to Edge native.
Yeah. But if you look at it like that, then
It's
the
maybe
one
okay
above
that it isn't unique. I mean, it depends on what the point of this section is. It still is a valid principle, certainly.
Yeah. But the two above are also the cloud native as well, right?
Yeah, it could be that, you know, that I don't necessarily have an objection. You know, it was the other table that's calling out differences. There's no requirement in my mind that this table call out all the differences. So depends what the intent here is. If we're trying to lay out kind of a best practices strategy for how you go about deploying apps at Edge, it probably is just perfectly fine that this is similar to what you do in cloud native.
Yeah, and maybe, you know, just additionally emphasizing that this is important in the Edge as well.
Okay,
If we don't
and then
do
Kate's
this,
comment
then
in the chat was that she'd like us to focus today on deciding the principles, so that is this very table that we're on right now, and addressing the comments related to that. So anyway, I take it she agrees with us moving on to this section and discussing it.
so let's summarize this in a comment. Huh?
Steve,
Yes,
I got a quick question, if I may.
yes.
Is there any, this looks really interesting for me. So the question is, do we have any like a due date to leave the comments or something?
No, there is an intent to give a presentation on this document at KubeCon, which is in the last half of October. And even then, I don't
Oh,
think
that's going to take place in US, right?
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's in Detroit. And even then, I don't think that that is a deadline for declaring that the document will be final at that point. It's just that we're going to expose the draft of this paper in the condition it's in. It'll basically, an effort will be made to convert this paper into a slide deck and then present it. But even then, it will be presented in the context that this is still open to discussion.
For contribution. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because I have been away for a long time, so I have no idea about this, but it looks different. It looks interesting. So I want to have some time to go through, you know, everything in details. Yeah, thank you.
And I'd encourage you to leave comments in this document, just like other people have been doing. So even if you're not sure, if you're just, you know, confused by the wording or something, go ahead and put it in, because that's a good technique for us to make this document as good as it can be.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
How shall we go about discussing these principles? It's a short enough table and we still have 30 minutes. Do you want to go over these line by line. If there's no objection, I propose to do that.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, so the first
Cool.
principle we've laid out is spanning. It says application has services that live across cloud to edge and tiered. Larger application lives across cloud to edge. I think maybe that description could be tightened up because those two phrases there seem kind of redundant to me, but then again, I'm a software engineer and not a writer.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think the key context there is that an application lives in this context where it's spread potentially across both geographic domains and maybe across network latency chasms. And it isn't just the latency chasms, but probably the reliability chasms, to where in a cloud native application, it's perhaps a bit less rare for end-tier applications to lose connectivity to the different levels. It's not impossible, and it does happen. Thus, that's why things like Kubernetes and collateral things have health checks, and you have things like load balancers. But living on edge does add some more elements to this. Probably latency is a fact of life.
Hey, Steve, could you summarize that into variable connectivity?
But I think we have that as the line 4. I was just thinking in my mind, spanning is just noting that we're not talking about applications that are edge only.
Mm-hmm.
They rarely are, right? So there is some control plane in the cloud, or something that handles data in the cloud as well, right? So it's not an application that lives only at the edge. Does that make sense?
We should probably call that out.
I would second what Dejan just said. Also, just to emphasize, this table is really a rough draft. I took everything that we had kind of bullet point and threw it in here. So none of this is worded probably as we want. So we should feel liberal in our rewording of things.
By the way, audio is now really good.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm hiding in my car now, so it's helpful.
Okay, I'm making a first pass at rewording this first one on spanning to pick up the gist of what I think we're talking about. So,
hey, one question, is distributed a better word than spanning?
Yeah. I think a lot of people like the cloud applications are already distributed in people's mind, right? So how do we make
geographically distributed? Now we're brainstorming, right?
Yeah.
Well, I took a crack at, I think I just rewrote what this means to align with what people were saying. Tell me what you think of what's in there.
I think that fits well with geographically distributed. Also, we've just originally this principle was called n-tiered, if we like that.
Okay, I'll put that in there too. Yeah, I used the word tiers, but is that good enough? It says tiers can straddle geographic latency and failure domain boundaries. So it doesn't use the term N, but it uses the term tiers.
I like that.
As it is, or you want me to put N tiered?
I like as it is, because I think N is vague and you were specific.
Okay. Okay, I'm good with what the spanning row looks like now. How anybody else got any other ideas to improve this?
Only if we keep calling it spanning, or as Joel said, maybe calling it geographically distributed or something like that. What do people think?
I like spanning because it's maybe more open-ended. There might be some context, yeah, where they're not so much geo-distributed as, you know, latency chasm distributed, or maybe even things like they're moving around, where mobile devices might sometimes be at one location and then things move around and they are at different ones and they're going back and forth.
Yeah, I think spanning gives us the opportunity to define a new term. Like
Yeah.
the fact that it doesn't quite make sense for us could allude to the power it could have of defining edge applications as being spanning. What does that mean? And setting that. But I also understand starting from a foundation could probably elude the same.
Yeah, the one hesitation I have to geo is that, to me, if you've got, say, 3 tiers that are connected by radio links, they might actually be at the same location, but when you go down to radio links instead of hardwired, you're facing the same sort of issues where these things can be kind of intermittently connected, big latencies, living in different failure domains, yet they are pretty much in the same geo area. But you would probably approach writing an app like that sort of in the same way that you would if they were geographically spread. So bottom line is I like spanning as a caption.
Cool.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. Portable with limits. Want to be able to lift and shift applications relatively tied to architectures, provider agnostic. I gather this means that, you know, we're hopeful that some abstraction layer exists so that you can write apps that you could reuse there. Let's say that I've got 10,000 edge locations with differences, because, you know, if you deploy 10,000, they're not going to be purchased and get deployed on the same day. If it took you 3 to 5 years to put out that campaign to provision hardware at edge, probably the ones you put out this year are different than the ones you put out 2 years ago. Yet you'd aspire to being able to write apps that, for the most part, a component that would get laid down at a particular edge location wouldn't have to get rewritten, because an abstraction layer would cover up some of those differences in the infrastructure. The differences you don't cover up are your IO devices, perhaps, but is that what this is meant to convey, that concept of providing app reusability through use of abstraction?
I think this principle we could debate removing, but I see it as saying, hey, these applications are portable, but not as portable as cloud native applications. There are configuration steps that you have with the edge that you don't have with the cloud. For example, maybe you're using the device plugin interface or the container device interface, which the latter works across orchestration systems. You have to configure that before you can shift your application. Things like that it's not quite as portable as an app that runs on the same hardware everywhere, but you still could make it portable. So I guess it's not well defined. So I wonder if we should remove it. And we might be covering a lot of that in the other principles.
How about if we leave it here as a placeholder for now, and if we find other parts cover this, we leave it. But let me take a crack. What if I call it application applications are portable and reusable with limits? It still isn't perfect, but maybe it's I like it better than what was there before.
But
Yeah,
I
you
think
definitely can understand it faster.
I think we should capture what Kate said about actually migrating applications between the nodes that probably require some configuration steps and manual intervention. Right?
Okay. Is it okay if I
Or-
use the term abstraction layer? Okay, how does that line sound? Abstraction layers attempt to provide infrastructure agnostic portability with configuration options as required to adapt to local differences.
I like that. It's saying we're trying to abstract this away, but what comes with it is extra configuration.
Uh-huh.
I think that's a good place to be for now. And I still think this might be something that we're going to find we cover generally in the next sections. And it would be nice to reduce the number of principles. So I think we've gotten this to a good point and can always remove it if we find that to be preferable.
Okay. And yeah, and who knows, maybe last week we had a tech writer who joined us, and maybe somebody will come around who's a little better at writing skills to tune this up further. Okay, how about if we move on to the third one then? It says capability focused. Environment is heterogeneous, so applications need to be aware of the unique capabilities of their internals, hardware in parens, and external environment, tiny edge devices.
Yeah, that goes in line with what discussed before about interacting with the.
Yeah, I think in a way
resources.
this is related to the one right above it, and maybe we don't need these two.
I think this goes along with the discussion we were having around environment earlier in the compare and contrast. Is that what you were saying, Dehan?
Yeah.
And I think whatever wording we choose there, we should referentially word here. So up there we chose, I don't know what it was. I don't remember, but I think this is referring to the same thing of resources. I think we use the word resource above, and here we're using capability.
Yeah, I like resources better myself. And maybe there's an issue of not even just, to me, not just using these resources, but, and maybe this is pushing the envelope of solutions already out there, but cataloging what resources are out there. You know, things like ACRI attempt to discover them, but in some cases, maybe they're not discoverable, yet you would still wish to have some sort of catalog of keeping track of what things are out there where, even if they couldn't be auto-discovered.
Yeah. What I think maybe is that this section can be before the portability, and then we can reference that because of this that's why the portability is limited. So I would leave for now the portability as well, but maybe call out that the heterogeneous environment is why we have a limited portability and extra steps for the.
Is that okay? I'm going to change capability to resource.
What about resource aware?
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And I think the expansion of the text should call out that, you know, the platform, you desire to have the platform keep track of what resources are out there and maybe give you an assist in being able to utilize those. Is that too general? You know, we have specific projects that attempt to do this, but I think what we need is a general statement of what you would hope the platform would do for you to manage resources, if you will.
Yeah, I think I agree. It should call out that there is a task of needing to catalog, manage, and easily connect to all these varied devices. And that's either a task that's uniquely taken on by each application builder, or there's a tool that abstracts that.
Maybe infrastructure instead of tool.
Steve, would that be just 2 resources? Take local out.
Well, to me, there might be like cloud hosted resources that are involved with the apps. And I don't think that Edge native would treat those in a way different from cloud native. Yet, you know, these local resources to me are the things like the IO devices that are specific, you know, to the domain of the edge location. That's why I put the word local in. If you want, we can take the word local out.
Yeah, just thinking out loud, that implies, well, to me, it implies like co-located. Okay.
Okay, let me ask what the group thinks of this. I edited to say under resource aware, tools to catalog, manage, and support connections to local resources are needed to support running edge applications efficiently at scale.
Yep, that sounds good to me.
Okay.
Might, I don't know, use infrastructure instead of tools, but maybe not.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, I like tools meant to me things, like some of the software projects like an Acri, where it was in the context of specific software. Whereas if I said infrastructure, it wouldn't seem to me like I was encompassing the software there.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, the fourth line then handles
But-
intermittent connectivity, aware of variable availability.
Before we go to the next one,
All right.
as I said before, maybe I would put resource aware at the second place, and then
Okay. All right.
and
That's okay with me. Any objections?
and then say because of resource awareness, we have a limited portability. Actually,
Oh, gee. Yes. Or Dion, why don't you, if you wanted a reaction to that, in the other, why don't you edit it and put it in? I'll delete this ghost row.
yeah. Let's try to see how will I put it. Maybe here I'll put it as a suggestion. So let me read it out loud. So abstraction layers attempt to provide infrastructure agnostic portability, but because of a local resource awareness, configuration options are required to adapt to local differences. How does it?
Yeah, that's okay. If you just want to close it and rather
Yeah.
than leave it a comment, just go for it.
Yeah, cool. Okay.
Okay, the fourth one of handles intermittent connectivity and awareness of variable availability. I like that title. The description seems to me to be more, the machine learning thing in there seems like a specific example rather than a description of what the principle is.
Definitely. Yeah, this was just from our brainstorm. I just put everything in there. So that this can help for if we have a paragraph on it. But I think the main focus of this was air gapped environments / like communication queuing for when you're offline versus online. Some of the things that we see, and I think this section would be really interesting to discuss kind of how Kubernetes has adapted to this. That could be like kind of a case study of this principle of how you have KubeEdge, which has like its own edge kind of, I forgot, edge core, I think is what it's called, where it's basically queuing information to send to the Kubernetes API server because it doesn't always have connection. So I think this is kind of how your architecture needs to be adapted, knowing that it won't always be able to access the control plane, nor its local environment even.
Yeah, that's edge core. KubeEdge, edge core. It caches data.
Thank you. Yeah, perfect.
I think the controller plane has a problem. If the connection is gone, I think node eviction happens, so that the application will be redeployed somewhere else. That's controller plane.
I wonder if we need a separate principle for this, or this can be a subset of this, but also what goes along with this is the fact that some edge deployments are on lockdown networks, where they don't want to reach out for information as much. So for example, you may pre-cache your containers on your edge deployments because you don't want to pull those from remote repositories, because you want to stay within your local network.
Are you suggesting that only for the workload deployments?
Yeah,
or
I think that's more, I don't know, to me, that's a governance issue that might cause somebody to choose to implement an application at an edge rather than in a public cloud. But it's not really a principle of how you would go build it.
That makes sense.
It does have repercussions, though, on the tooling you'd need. Like the ability to stand up your own image registries and things, and air gap your networks.
Yeah, I'm happy leaving that discussion out, or putting it elsewhere. This makes sense.
Okay. I'm okay with this fourth row right now. It maybe is a little wordy, but I don't have any objection to it. And everybody else ready to move on to row 5?
Yeah.
Okay. That is management at scale. I don't know, even when I think scale sort of goes across the board on all of these as an overall principle that applies to all of these lines. I'm not sure it needs to be called out on its own.
Yeah, I think we
Maybe-
can. Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
So maybe just to call out that, yeah, I mean, this is like I think management of locations at scale, right? Which is different than so to say that we want to be able to scale to thousands of locations and different edge nodes and environments in a uniform way.
Mm-hmm.
Was that the original idea here?
It could be. If so, I'd agree with that. I mean, one of the interesting things about Edge is I often hear of Edge applications that are aspire to scale to tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe even a million Edge locations or devices. And in traditional cloud native in Kubernetes, 5,000 was thought to be enough. There are some aspects of Kubernetes that are happy with 5,000 nodes being a cap or something on that order. And when you get to Edge, the numbers can get bigger than that.
So it sounds like maybe the difference here is region management at scale. So while in the cloud, you only have a few regions you may be deploying your workloads to, in the edge, those regions may get larger and larger. Or is it those 10,000 nodes at one location?
But what I'm thinking is this a principle of yeah, Edge native application or
We might cover this in
Yeah,
centrally
yeah.
observable and declarative orchestration. I feel like both of those are
Yeah.
components of management.
Yeah, they're how you they're the tooling that allows you to deal with the massive scale potentially.
so
How about if we just
maybe-
mark this line as maybe this falls out because we're kind of covering it across the board in the other rows?
But maybe merge these two, so centrally manageable and observable, meaning that we have a single control plane for all edge
Okay,
node sites.
yeah. How about central management and observability as a technique to deal with scale?
Yeah.
I think originally management at scale was alone, and centrally observable and declarative orchestration fell under it. And then I think we split it out because we wanted to have one word principles, or kind of just as small and narrow as possible. We can revert that, but that was just, I think, where our thought process was at one point.
So maybe then not management at scale. I mean, scale is important, but maybe the same thing, centrally manageable. So having a single control plane to
to me, the management, the aspects of how you go about management are the observability, and then orchestration really is management, isn't it? So I think this management at scale really is something related to the two rows below it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it only should suggest that there's a single control plane for the whole infrastructure, right? And if we can put it into some other principle, that's good.
Yeah, the one thing that I don't think is called out in these other rows that I think is a common technique for management at scale is that if you could impose centrally policies that get cascade down to the different tiers and locations, that's how these systems are usually built, right? So central policy management to deal with scale.
I'm just looking what we have in the notes down under the vendor neutral pass.
And by the way, we've reached our time limit, and I'm going to have to drop off.
So do I. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we made some good progress here.
Yeah. I'll stop here.
I'd invite anybody to go back at these ones we're still in the middle of discussion with and go have at it, either edit directly. I think nobody here is super happy with this. So whether you wanted to do it as a comment or just take another crack at rewriting these, I'd say go for it. But let's call this session to an end and we'll resume again at a future meeting. Okay, bye everybody. Thanks for attending. I'll stop the recording and see you next time.